Did you know that during World War II, bombers were getting shot down at an alarming rate? In response, military leaders examined the bombers that made it back and decided to reinforce the parts that were being hit the most. This solution seemed reasonable, but it made the planes heavier and less efficient. Then, a mathematician named Abraham Wald proposed a different approach. He believed that reinforcing the areas that weren't being hit would be more effective. Wald argued that if a bomber was hit and still made it back, then the parts that were hit weren't as important. Instead, he suggested reinforcing the areas that weren't being hit, since those were likely the areas where the planes that didn't make it back were hit. As it turned out, Wald's theory was correct. Reinforcing the non-hit areas of the planes allowed them to better withstand enemy fire and ultimately improve their survival rate drastically. This example shows how the survivor bias can lead to incorrect conclusions and why it's important to consider all angles when making decisions or analyzing data. Hey rational rebels! Welcome to the arena of reason, where we train our minds to spot cognitive pitfalls. This is Chris from Critical Conditioning, where we strive for cognitive precision and free our brains from that mental prison. In today's episode, we'll be discussing survivor bias, a cognitive fallacy that can distort our perception of reality and hinder our decision-making abilities. But before we dive into the topic, I want to ask for your support. Running a podcast takes a lot of effort and resources, and if you find value in our content, please consider donating to our PayPal using the link in the description. Your contribution will go towards improving the quality of our episodes and supporting our mission to strengthen analytical skills and critical thinking. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to stay updated on our latest releases. And if you find this episode informative, please share it with your loved ones. Let's continue on our journey towards cognitive clarity and accuracy. Tragic survivor bias fun fact. Did you know that survivor bias can be a sneaky thing, especially in the world of sports? You might see successful athletes on magazine covers and social media, and think they have everything figured out. But the truth is, their journey to the top is often a unique combination of genetics, hard work, and luck. For every successful athlete, there are countless others who never made it despite working just as hard, having the same drive, and sharing the same passion. It's unfortunate that we don't hear more about the experiences of the vast majority of athletes who tried and failed, making up over 99.9% of the experiences of becoming a top athlete. This can lead to a very biased perspective on what it takes to make it to the top. For every famous top athlete you follow on your social media, you should probably also follow 1,000 athletes that did not survive while making it to the top, meaning that they didn't make it. Otherwise, you may fall prey to survivorship bias. Have you ever stopped to think about how many people follow or read about the stories of those aspiring athletes who didn't make it for every one successful athlete? It's important to keep in mind that this skewed perspective can distort our understanding of what it truly takes to succeed in sports. The saddest thing of all is that aspiring athletes could learn far more from the mistakes and pitfalls of those who didn't make it than from top athletes who, thanks to luck or genetics, never experienced the common difficulties and pitfalls that the vast majority of athletes face. So, when you're striving to be the best, remember not to just look to the successes, learn from the failures too. There have been many studies and questionnaires conducted on survivor bias, and some of the results are quite fascinating. There is one interesting study that looked at how we perceive historical events, and it turns out that we often view events through the lens of survivor bias. This can really mess with our understanding of what actually happened. For example, when you think about the soldiers who fought in World War II, you probably focus on the ones who survived and came home as heroes. But what about the many soldiers who didn't make it home? Their stories often go unheard. This can easily bias us into thinking that going to war will make us heroes, forgetting that many people that go to war often die horrible deaths for no reason. It's important to remember the whole picture, not just the survivors, when thinking about events like this. Another interesting finding is that people tend to underestimate the role of luck in the success of others. They assume that successful people got to where they are solely through their own hard work and abilities, and don't acknowledge the role of chance events that may have contributed to their success. This can lead to an unrealistic belief in the power of individual effort and a lack of empathy for those who haven't achieved success. Survivor bias can even affect the way we make decisions in our personal lives. One study found that people tend to overestimate the success rate of certain treatments or therapies because they only hear about the success stories. For example, if you're considering a particular medical treatment, you may be more likely to choose it if you hear about someone who had great success with it, even if the success rate is actually quite low. Another surprising finding is that survivor bias can even affect the decisions we make in our personal lives. One study showed that people are more likely to stay in unhappy relationships because they are exposed to happy couples on mainstream and social media. This means that you may be more likely to stay in a relationship that isn't working out because you only see the happy relationships around you. But perhaps one of the most counterintuitive findings on survivor bias is that it can actually be beneficial in some cases. For instance, in a study on investing, researchers found that investors who focused on successful companies and ignored the failures actually had better returns than those who spread their investments across all companies equally. This is because the successful companies are often the ones that are truly innovative and have the potential for long-term success. Furthermore, being aware of how survivor bias can affect us personally can help us make more informed decisions and avoid relying solely on survivorship stories to guide our choices. Survivor bias can affect people in different ways, depending on their individual differences. For example, research suggests that people who have a high need for closure or certainty are more prone to survivor bias. This is because they may be more likely to seek out information that confirms their existing beliefs and ignore information that contradicts them. On the other hand, people who are more open to new experiences are less susceptible to survivor bias. This is because they are more willing to consider multiple perspectives and explore different options, rather than just focusing on what has worked in the past. Another interesting finding is that people with high levels of optimism are more prone to survivor bias. This is because they may be more likely to overestimate their own chances of success and ignore the risks and challenges that others have faced. There is also some evidence to suggest that survivor bias may also be influenced by gender. One study found that women were more likely to attribute their own successes to external factors, such as luck or help from others, whereas men were more likely to attribute their successes to their own abilities. This could mean that women are less likely to fall prey to survivor bias, as they are more aware of the role that external factors can play in success. Overall, individual differences play an important role in determining who is more susceptible to survivor bias. By understanding these differences, we can better identify when we may be at risk of falling into this cognitive trap and take steps to avoid it. I recently came across an interesting debate and I want to ask you, do you think the media should be more transparent about the low chances of becoming a top performer in fields like sports, entertainment, or business? Should they emphasize the role of luck, genetics, and survivor bias in elevating certain individuals to the top, rather than solely focusing on their hard work? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to read what others are thinking. And don't forget to like and subscribe to help out the channel. Survivor bias is a cognitive bias that leads people to make erroneous conclusions by focusing only on the success stories of a particular group, ignoring the unsuccessful ones. It's a phenomenon that can be observed in many aspects of our lives. Here are some examples. Successful entrepreneurs. It's common to hear stories of successful entrepreneurs who started their businesses with nothing and went on to become millionaires. However, what we don't hear about are the countless entrepreneurs who failed and went bankrupt. By focusing only on the success stories, we may overlook important factors that contribute to success or failure, such as access to resources or timing. Hollywood blockbusters. The film industry is another area where survivor bias is prevalent. We tend to hear about the box office hits, but not the hundreds of films that never make it to the big screen or fail to recoup their costs. By focusing only on the successful films, we may miss out on smaller, independent films that have the potential to be just as impactful. Survivorship bias in education. We often hear stories of successful college dropouts like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, who went on to become billionaires. However, what we don't hear about are the countless dropouts who struggled to make ends meet or never achieved the same level of success. By focusing only on the success stories, we may overlook the importance of education and the value of persistence and hard work. Assuming that all successful people in a field earned their success purely through merit and ignoring the role of privilege and connections can lead to a flawed perception of success. While hard work and talent are undoubtedly important factors, it's also crucial to recognize that opportunities and access to resources play a significant role in achieving success. Assuming that all students who got into prestigious universities are smarter or more hardworking, ignoring the role of privilege, genetics and resources, can perpetuate a myth of meritocracy in education. The reality is that not all students have the same access to resources and support, and this can have a significant impact on their academic achievements and opportunities. Thinking that all best-selling books or movies are of the best quality, ignoring the role of marketing and chance, can lead to a narrow and biased view of art and culture. While some popular works may indeed be of high quality, there are many factors beyond artistic merit that can influence their success, such as marketing strategies and luck. Now that we have a better understanding of what survivor bias is and how it manifests in various aspects of our lives, it's important to know how to recognize it and avoid falling into its trap. So how to spot the survivor bias? Survivorship bias can be a tricky cognitive bias to spot in ourselves and others. However, one effective method is to look up the statistics. With the internet at our fingertips, we can quickly search for the actual chances of survival in a given scenario. Additionally, simply being aware of the existence of this bias can help us recognize it more easily. When we understand that we tend to focus on successful outcomes and overlook the failures, we can consciously make an effort to look for those failures and learn from them. By doing so, we can gain a more accurate and well-rounded understanding of the factors that contribute to success or failure. Another useful technique for avoiding survivorship bias is to conduct a pre-mortem analysis. This involves imagining a hypothetical scenario in which a project or venture fails and then identifying the reasons why it might have failed. By doing this, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of the factors that contribute to success or failure, rather than just focusing on the outcomes of successful ventures. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Critical Conditioning: Strengthening Your Mind's Analytical Skills. I hope you enjoyed our discussion on the survivor bias and how it can affect our decision-making process. As rational rebels, it's important for us to continuously improve our reasoning abilities and avoid cognitive pitfalls. That's why I encourage you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated on future episodes. If you found this episode insightful, I urge you to share it with your friends and family. Let's spread the word and help others strengthen their analytical skills. And if you really want to show your support, consider donating to our PayPal using the link in the description. Your contribution will help us continue to bring you high-quality content that challenges your mind and pushes you to think critically. Remember, keeping your mind sharp is key to success in life. So until the next time we meet in the arena of reason, this is Chris from Critical Conditioning signing off. Keep your mind sharp, rational rebels.